Thank you all for joining for this event that Asians in Animation is hosting from switching careers into animation production with Rachel Leung. I don't know if Rachel, do you want to start us off in giving us a quick intro on who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Rachel. I currently work as a production coordinator at Lucasfilm with their franchise animation team. But before that, I was mostly in food and beverage and then had a small stint in tech and then worked in localization for a little bit. So that's sort of the points that I had to take in order to get to where I am. We are very excited to talk about how my transition went. And of course, I know everyone is starting off in different places, so it's gonna sound kind of cheesy, but I know it's not impossible to get to production or animation or wherever you'd like in the entertainment industry. If your path ends up looking a little wonky or curvy, that's totally fine. I think part of my journey was trying to push myself to make sure that every sort of transition I make was a step towards my goal. And my goal at the time was to be a production coordinator in entertainment. I didn't know if I wanted to do live action or animation. I just knew that that was going to be my goal after graduating from college. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of dive in. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat and I'm happy to answer.
And just as a bit of house rules, so please don't ask for contact information, don't ask for portfolio reviews, or don't ask them to read your script or listen to your pitch. Also, for any questions that you all may have during the presentation or after the event, we do have the Q&A section that you can put your questions in. You are welcome to put questions in the chat as well, but they might kind of go missed a little bit. So we recommend that you put them in the Q&A. We can go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Cool. Thank you, Karina.
Yes, you're welcome.
So I think I'll just start at the beginning. I did not know what I wanted to do. I didn't think I was going to be in the entertainment industry back in, I would say, high school. So a lot of my first working experience was in food service. I started when I was 15. I just graduated middle school and wanted a part-time. And that's something that I've sort of created my foundation around is just food, beverage, customer service. Um, and then even when I went into college, I didn't know that I wanted to do entertainment or production. I ended up choosing to do film studies at University of California, Davis, just because it was a little more general. And I knew that I was interested in film, just not exactly sure what area of it. And while I was at Davis, I was still doing food and bev. I also got an office assistant job. So there I gained a little bit of experience with Excel spreadsheets, documents, more handling financial information, which did end up coming a little bit in handy, especially if you, like me, don't like maths. It's good practice, just understanding what the numbers mean. And after watching Doctor Strange, I forgot what year that came out, but as anyone does when you watch a Marvel film, you sit and watch the credits and wait for the end credit scene. For some reason, just a light bulb went off in my head, and I realized all the credits that I was looking at on screen were potential roles. I was so used to thinking that, oh, you can only be a director, you can only be a screenwriter or a cinematographer, and those are the only things you can really study to be, and that's how you enter the industry. But I saw a lot of production based roles like production manager, line producer, and that sort of gave me the inspiration to pursue a more production based job. And at the time, I was looking into master programs, I think for business admin, because that's just what my family wanted. And then I decided, why don't I look into masters for film production? So, which is what I did. And I applied to a couple here in the States, but found a program in London that was only a year and was more focused on producing as opposed to screenwriting or directing, which I was not so interested in. But I knew that even if I didn't find one in producing, still taking a directing course would have taught me a lot about production. And I ended up going to University of London Royal Holloway and did their master's in producing film and television. And this was in 2019, right before COVID hit. So everything was kind of going swimmingly. I was learning a lot about producing in the European lens. So some of the information doesn't really apply here, but a lot of just the general how do you produce a film, how do you produce a television show is pretty similar enough. And then COVID hit, and I came back to the States and wrote my dissertation here. So during that time, I was pretty much just writing. There wasn't much career advancement going on. But after a while, because I'm the kind of person who always needs something to do, I found a food and bev job because that is my comfort zone and easy for me to transition back into. I started working at Boba Guys and writing my dissertation while doing part-time. The industry was not really hiring, and I'm sure a lot of you experienced that too, where productions just weren't working, studios weren't hiring. It was a really hard time for the entertainment industry, and even if there were any jobs opening up, it was just so competitive because there were graduates from that year, there were people who got laid off during COVID who were looking to get back in. So I did not really focus on getting back into the industry. I just kind of wanted to get my dissertation done, get my master's, and then see what the industry looks like, what the job market looks like. And it took a while after my dissertation got submitted. I stayed with Boba Guys just because I was there for a while and was still applying, but not much was coming back to me in terms of responses. So at some point, I decided I needed to focus on gaining more transferable skills that I can take with me and also just brushing up my resume. So I ended up helping out with a couple indie shorts that were filming in the area just to get practical experience and also use what I learned from my master's program and try and apply it to an actual production and see where I fall short. So I learned that I'm really awful with finances and creating budgets, but I'm great when it comes to trying to figure out a production schedule or shooting schedule. Really awful with development. I'm not that great with the creative aspect, but once the creative vision is set, then I can help out and jump in and be like, okay, how are we going to get this done? So from those two shorts, I got a little more hands-on experience, got to practice my skills so I don't lose them. And at the same time, I was still looking to see where there were areas in the industry that I could kind of swerve into. But after a while, I decided that it was time to move out of food and bev. I really wanted to get more exposure to like an office setting or management styles, or just get a more technical experience with programs that I might use once I hopefully get a job in entertainment. So an opportunity came up to work at Tesla. So that I thought, you know what, I live in Silicon Valley, might as well get a little bit of experience in the tech industry. And I moved over and I joined their data annotation team, worked with Autopilot, and I think that was a really interesting time because tech was so big and there was so much, there were a lot of eyes on big companies like Tesla at the time. So it did feel a little bit like being in the entertainment industry, but not exactly. And as far as the work goes, I think one of the skills that I learned there was how to interact with different people. There's my team members, there's my manager, there's supervisors, there's people from other teams. I had to learn how to communicate with QCs, and then eventually I became a QC and people were coming to me, so I had to learn how to communicate to them as a QCer. And that is something that I feel like is really valuable in this industry, is just learning how to communicate with people. And then outside of that, like technically, I did a lot of QC on moving images and still images. So that ended up being a skill that came in very handy when I'm in my current job now. If I have to ever QC any clips or text, being able to spot any errors or differences is something that I sort of trained my eye to do at Tesla. So very thankful for that experience. It was a lot of help. And then after a while at Tesla, I thought my next step, I really wanted to make it something that was closer to the entertainment industry. And I got an offer to work as a contractor with the localization team at Netflix. So I took that because I figured, it's not a job with Netflix, but at least I'm working in entertainment or with entertainment at the very least. So I was not that familiar with localization to begin with. It's the very tail end of post production. But as someone who watches anime and reads subtitles all the time, it was kind of interesting to learn how that all gets put together. And Netflix at the time was also starting to pump out a lot of content and also acquire a lot of international content. So subtitles became very, very important. And learning how to manage multiple shows, speaking to PMs over at Netflix, as well as my supervisors at my contracting company, and liaising with the localization providers, the third party vendors, as well as the actual translators who are working on the translations and subtitles for the shows. It was a lot of different moving parts, and that's something that applies to all productions. And it was very applicable, I think, even if it was just a small part of post production. A lot of what I do is similar to what I do for an entire production. And as far as, I guess, the localization aspect goes, I guess now I can't really watch shows without not paying attention to subtitles because I'm so used to spotting things or just looking at the text and noticing how the showrunners or the creators decide what gets subtitled versus what doesn't get subtitled, what's the intention behind that. So I learned a lot about that, and it was a nice experience, even if I don't get to see my name credited anywhere, being able to go back and watch a show on Netflix and being like, oh, I remember that particular line caused me a lot of problems because this and that, or being able to recognize why certain things are subtitled a certain way. And yeah, and I think it's just really gratifying being at the time being able to say that I got to work on one of my favorite shows is Umbrella Academy. So when season 3 came out, I immediately was like, I volunteer. I want to work on that. It did spoil the show a little bit. I did have to watch some of it before it actually officially aired, but at the very least, it gave me a sense of pride that like I got to work on something that I really love. And then I think during this time, the industry was starting to pick up again. I was starting to just send out applications anywhere that was still hiring, especially for coordinator positions or assistant positions, even. And I got really lucky. Lucasfilm was hiring. I sent out a cold application and within a couple of days got a response. And turnaround time was very quick. I think from when I first got a response to my application to when I got the job offer, it was about 2 weeks. So I think they're really looking to find someone to fill this position. And yeah, I was very lucky to get this position with this team. Turns out someone that I worked with on one of the indie shorts during COVID, he also worked at Lucasfilm when I reached out and got some intel from him and got to hear about his experience, which was very nice. And yeah, and now I've been with this team for about a little over 2 years. Didn't expect to be in the animation industry at all. To be honest, I think my goal was set on live action, but considering how I love animation and I've started to gain a really I've started to appreciate the process to animate anything, whether it's like a short or even a feature length film. Really starting to like animation and appreciate all the different styles that are out there. But yeah, that's sort of how I managed to squeeze my toe in the door, and then here I am. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I know a lot of people are looking for support during this time because the industry is kind of, little ups and down, kind of more down, but it's okay. But yeah, no, it's amazing how you were able to transition from, going from a non-traditional, like animation background into, going into the film industry. So that's very inspiring for people to hear and motivating too.
Thank you. Yeah, I always feel like sometimes it's okay to not have like an end goal set as long as you kind of know where it is you want to go, whether it's like I want to be in this industry or I want to work at this company or I want to have this job title, as long as you have some sort of idea of that direction. If you're flexible and able to pivot when things don't go according to plan or find different ways to capitalize on the experience and opportunities you do have now, it's totally doable. And I think one of the things that helped me get this job at Lucasfilm is the fact that my journey was not very straightforward. I could have easily, gone straight from college to my master's to straight into the industry. But I think a very a common that's a very common journey that a lot of people have. And I don't know, in my mind, I always thought that having experience was more valuable than having the academic knowledge of how to produce. And I don't maybe others will feel the same way, but what I learned in my master's program and even in college, I forgot to mention, but I ended up switching my major to cinema and digital media. I felt like that was a little more applicable at the time. A lot of what I learned there doesn't actually apply here because it's producing is has a very specific workflow, and it also depends on which studio you work with. They have like a set way of this is how we produce here, and you don't learn that. There's no book that tells you how to do that. You just kind of have to either be thrown into it and get practical experience, or watch watch documentaries on how the production process goes, which I love to do. I love watching behind the scenes documentaries, or attend talks with people who are in the industry and hear them talk about what it took to get from just the concept of I don't know, concept of the film to post production, and even beyond that, what else had to happen to get a film up and distributed. So yeah, I feel like just whatever experiences you have available to you, just take any transferable skills, and if you can build on that, that I would be very helpful. But at the same time, don't let any like unique experiences or non-traditional experiences deter you from thinking that you have an opportunity to get into the animation industry, because those are the things that make you unique and stand out from other applicants. And it's just good to differentiate yourself, because you'd be surprised by how interesting the HR or hiring team might feel that your other experiences are. I know that personally for me, it was the fact that I went from tech to localization. They thought that was a really interesting jump. And I personally think it was an interesting jump too, but I explained this is what I had to do to kind of get myself into a position where I could comfortably start applying to entertainment jobs. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, this job market's so competitive right now. So
Mhm.
it really helps that you're giving this presentation on how to switch careers. And I think, yeah, just great that you're here right now.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And I know that even the market right now is still not that great. There's a lot of competition for even the most entry level jobs, and there's not that many entry level jobs available either. So if not the entertainment industry, there's a lot of other ways, or even other industries where there are similar opportunities that you can use, or you can try to go for to get yourself back into entertainment. For example, like in tech, they always have teams that are working on their PR marketing materials or commercial materials. Like that's also great ways to learn about production of a commercial or any sort of like promotional videos. That also helps. And then whatever you learn from there, you can transition into entertainment from there. Or another place that I remember looking for jobs at is gaming industries, because not because Arcane came out and Riot's really big on making cinematics, but I knew that I used to play a lot of games, and I liked watching the animation and understanding kind of the production of it. I wasn't into game production. I didn't have much knowledge about it, but it was something I was also open to learning about because I knew that whatever I learned there has to be something that I could take from it and apply into entertainment. So whatever industry you start off with, I think it's scary to move out of because it becomes kind of a comfort zone. Like for me, it's food and beverage, but at the end of the day, if you really want to get into the entertainment industry and have a passion for it, that's going to speak a lot of volumes to the hiring managers. And if you can somehow express that sort of interest and passion for filmmaking or entertainment in general in your resume by showing, even though I'm working a cafe job on the side, I'm taking like online courses to learn more about production, or I'm getting involved in AIA or trying to find opportunities. These are all the indie shorts or student films that I've been working on the side. I feel like that kind of experience is what is going to take you a lot further in this industry than just straight up going to school for a specific for filmmaking. And I will say you don't need you don't need a master's in anything to get into this industry. I feel like that sort of academic experience is useful, but if you have a bunch of student films and practical experience under your belt, you are going to be in a much better position going into the entertainment industry than just having the academic knowledge. Not all of what I learned at my program was super helpful, because that it was also based on the UK entertainment industry, but just reading about it is not the same as actually participating and doing budgeting. In my current job, I don't do any budgeting, but I do have exposure to it. Having to write budgets from and pull numbers out of thin air was not that useful because I didn't really understand where those numbers are coming from and what exactly do they mean and how does it impact the production overall. But now that I'm in the industry and I have exposure to these budgets and I can ask these sort of questions to the producer I work with, then I'm starting to understand what budgets mean and being able to read them. And then I think it's the same with reading a schedule. If you're working on an indie film and you have to schedule the entire shoot, let's say it's a one week shoot based on the script, having that hands-on experience of trying to draft up a schedule from a real production and then seeing it be produced according to your schedule, or as according to your schedule as possible, you'll learn a lot about what works and what doesn't work, and just overall scheduling what it takes to get everything done if you have a set amount of time. That's something that was not really well taught, I think, in my program, where we did have to write a schedule, but we were tasked with taking an existing script. And from there, I think I used the script for the pilot episode of Suits, and I already know what that looks like because I watched it. So for me, it was a lot easier I already have a visual of what the script looks like in my head. So it's really easier for me to place everything on a production schedule because I know these scenes take place here and only have these characters based on what I remember from the pilot. So I can schedule that, as opposed to reading it from a script. It's a lot harder. So yeah, I would say if you're able to get any hands-on experience, that'd be really valuable because I think you're able to learn a lot more, and just exposure also to working with people is really important. You all know that networking is a huge part of this industry. It's also personally one of the harder parts for me because I used to be very shy and very quiet. I did not like initiating any sort of conversation. Small talk was very scary. So something that I had to train myself to do was learn how to small talk and communicate from as if I was speaking to a client. Back in food and bev, it would be speaking to a customer. And because I did food and bev for so long, I trained myself to be comfortable talking in that position. Um, and I feel like if I never did any of those kind of food and beverage jobs, I would be a lot shyer. And you really have to be able to learn how to talk to people and adapt to different personalities and learn how to kind of cater how you speak depending on the situation. So yeah, and any exposure you have to working with people as well is going to be very helpful. Sorry, long spiel, but hopefully
No,
that
no,
was
you're good.
enough.
You're good. I completely agree. I also come from a background from food and bev, and it has gotten me places in my resume. I know a lot of people will be like, "Are you sure you want to put that because it's not related to animation?" But I watch a ton of webinars, and they all say the same thing that you get the transferable skills from there, and
Mm,
they actually appreciate that. Like I used to work at Olive Garden as a hostess. And they're like, we can tell you're such a hardworking person because you did all this while you were managing, your work here as a producer on this film or whatever. So
yeah.
it definitely does help to have those on your resume.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of also depends on what kind of food and bev. Like if you're like hostess, you interact with people a lot. Some some food and bev jobs don't interact with people as much, but even then you still get other skills. For example, when I worked at Phil's, I on the bar, I have to interact with people a lot of times. And I learned how to speak to them and in the most like efficient way because they're probably in a rush to get their coffee. I have to make a bunch of drinks. So what is the best way to communicate what they get what understand what they want and communicate any like additional steps. But then when I was at Boba Guys, I actually didn't work front of house. I was at the production kitchen, which didn't really interact with customers, but that also gave me the opportunity to work with a team. And it's a little similar in a way to producing a film. We're producing product, but we have a schedule we have to take a look at. Different stores that we're supporting have different schedules for delivery. So we have to manage, okay, this thing that they're ordering has a shelf life of this much. What's the best day to make it? We have to count for delivery time, all that sort of things. And then just like the day to day, making sure everyone has tasks delegated to them. Are things going to be able to be done on time? Jumping in when things need more assistance or more support. That's also just very applicable in similar situations that you would experience in animation, where if you have a deadline for something and you need more support, how do you communicate that to your coordinator or your manager, or just understanding the process of which like you go from like sketches. Sorry, I'm not very, very well versed, but from what I understand, you go from like the 2D drawings to the modeling, and then that gets added like in some sort of layout or comp phase. In like food, there's usually a lot of processes before something gets like shipped out. So like you need to prep the ingredients before you process it, cook it, or whatever, and then you have to package it. So just being able to understand a workflow and adapt to it and problem solve when things don't go according to plan or there's some sort of hiccup like with supply or scheduling. Yeah, all very applicable. Food and bev service is something that's I feel like is worth noting on your resume if you have it.
Sure.
Also, yes, the high stress. If you can handle the food and bev stress environments, you will be fine in production. It's pretty similar.
No, I agree. I work at Smoothie King. And
Mm,
so yeah, it's high stress, especially during the summers. Like right now we get a lot of inside orders, drive through orders, just everything all at once. So that definitely plays a part in production, like from going here, there, everywhere, and they definitely appreciate that.
yeah, and then especially when you hit like a road bump, something that I've been working on myself is to be more solution driven when trying to problem solve. So as opposed to flagging, oh hey, there's a problem here. Um, bring up some solutions, bring up a couple ideas for how the problem can be solved. That is one, a way to practice your own problem solving skills, but two, shows that you know how to problem solve and you understand the process well enough where you can come up with solutions to the problem. And unfortunately, not everything is going to go to plan in production as much as we'd love it to. And being able to identify areas where, like early on, being able to know, oh, this might be an issue. This due date might be an issue because it's so close to that due date, or it's part of, or something is coming up, and you know that it might be a potential issue. Being able to kind of address that early on or identify those potential flags earlier on is also a great skill to have, because I think producers or anyone high up who aren't able to do that sort of like deeper dive into the every like the schedule on like a weekly or monthly basis, they're looking more overall. If you can pinpoint those places early on and um, mitigate any issues, I think that's a very much appreciated skill to have.
We can start going into Q&As. So the first question we have is, it's about, do you have any advice on working non-entertainment work on your resume during interviews when applying to production roles?
I would say it's still important to highlight the production entertainment related experiences you have or skills that you have. The food and beverage or any other non-entertainment role, I should say, it's good to touch on the soft skills, the transferable skills that generally a lot of job descriptions will ask for. Like, we want someone detail oriented, we want someone who can handle high stress, or being able to work independently. Like those sorts of things you can always tie back into other experiences, because any industry you work in will usually give you that kind of opportunity to develop those skills. But I would say it is also important to highlight what makes you unique and what makes you stand out from other applicants. If you assume that all applicants, meet the general requirements for the job, what else can you bring to the table? So that is going to be dependent on all your other experiences. So it's really good to just give an opportunity to let those experiences have a spotlight. And it's also nice to I would IMDb whoever you're speaking to. I did that, and that turned out to work really well in my favors, because I found out that the team that I was or one of the people that I would be speaking with, she produced a documentary called, oh my God, I forgot what it's called. It's the first robotics documentary that was on Disney Plus. It's currently not on Disney Plus anymore, unfortunately. But because I found out about that and I was on robotics when I was in high school, I was able to sort of bring that up in the conversation and also add that experience to my resume. Just being able to explain that, yeah, I've worked on a robotics team. I understand like the whole process of building a robot. If we want to put parallels, like building the robot, producing animation, there's a whole schedule you have to make. Competition is sort of like, okay, we have to air it. And then just asking her about why that documentary came about. What was it like producing during COVID? Because it came out during COVID. And I think that also just made me a more memorable applicant. You'll remember, oh, there was that one applicant who talked about robotics, because it's such an obscure kind of experience. Not everyone's going to have that. So having unique experiences to differentiate yourself are going to be very, very useful tools.
And so the next question we have, aside from communication skills, which other skill sets, programs, or processes that you have found yourself tapped into a lot for your current role? Things that you find helpful or useful that someone should learn.
Less specific ones, I would say, is time management, being able to manage your time and learn how to prioritize tasks without having someone oversee that for you. It takes time to kind of figure it out, especially when you're jumping into a new role in a new industry where you don't have as much experience. I would say focus a lot of your early part of your job on kind of adapting to the workflow there, adapting to different management systems. What are they using and how do they use it? And just kind of immerse yourself in that before you try to put yourself, put your methods in. For example, like the way that my team calendars is not how I personally kind of manage my own schedule, but going into the job, I didn't want to confuse myself or make things too complicated by trying to implement how I like to schedule with what's already built and what already works with the team. So um, kind of learning, being able to learn and adapt to what's already in place, processes that are in place is going to be really important. And then once you're comfortable enough and have a better understanding of how things work, then you can start kind of integrating what works best for you. And you can always, and I think a lot of people will appreciate when you bring up like, hey, I think this is a more efficient way, here's why. And that's how you can kind of bring your own skills and your own knowledge into work. And then how you manage information. I think for me, it started a lot with like just taking physical notes on pen and paper. I did that a lot when I was working with Netflix because I had so many different shows. I had like a notebook for each different show I'm working on and just like scribbling notes here and there. But eventually I transitioned and now I use Notes, the Notes app on my Mac, and then managing my emails, I like to turn emails into tasks, and that's how I build my to-do list. I know some of my team members prefer to use pen and paper. Some like to use the reminders app, I think is what it's called on the Mac. So however you want, however works for you, being able to manage all your tasks and all the information that's coming at you because it's not going to stop and give you like pause and let you take notes or whatever. You have to be able to manage all that information very quickly. So being able to know what works best for you early on is going to set you up a lot easier and a lot faster when you first jump into a role. And then just the general, like being able to communicate with people. I still have trouble with that. Like when I need help, it takes me like a hot second to be able to communicate that I need help because I'm so focused on like how do I figure this out myself, or just knowing how to talk to people, like using how when to use business speak as opposed to like more casual speak. I guess you could say like when you're writing emails, and it depends on who you're writing to and what you're writing about. And then just also in-person interaction, like social skills. If you work in a hybrid or in a hybrid setting where you go into office once in a while or you're always in office, just being able to learn how to talk to people is really important. I'm personally hybrid, so there was a time when I was fully remote. My Netflix job was fully remote. I wasn't really talking to people in person. Sure, we talk on Zoom and we can communicate, but you sort of have that like safety of I'm in my home office, I'm at home, I'm not in an office setting, so I feel a little more comfortable. But when you're in an office and you're physically there talking to people and seeing people, it's a little different. You have to kind of be more aware of how you're presenting yourself. So having that sort of experience of in-person interaction is good too.
Great advice, you know. A lot of people wonder, you know, like what other like experiences or skills can I put? And I think you answered that perfectly.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. No problem. Guess we can transition into the next question. This one, if you felt that pursuing a master's program is pivotal to finding jobs in production, or if it is more about experience slash networking.
Mm, I think it really depends on what area of production you're going into because I can see why getting a master's in directing or script screenwriting will make you a lot more enticing of an applicant compared to someone who doesn't have that master's. But at the same time, if you've already written some things or directed some work, having that to show as like your reel or your portfolio says a lot about you as well. Because when you go through a program, I'm sure you work on a couple things, but no one, I think the hiring team won't be looking into your grades or how well you did or anything like that. But if you have something to show for, like I can show you the trailer to the thing I directed, that might inform them more about you as a director as opposed to just saying I have a master's in it. But then for something like producing, that requires a lot more skills that aren't as visible on paper as opposed to in person. So it really depends on what area. I think both are really valuable to have, both like practical and academic. And if you do pursue a master's, a lot of times you do get the practical experience in the form of like short films, student projects, things like that. For us, for my producing program, we produced web series pilots with the screenwriting team. We all sort of acted as producers and had the screenwriters come and pitch their script to us, and then we all like picked which one we wanted to do, and we actually produced it. So it was kind of trying to mimic a real life production, but because it's in an academic setting, you do have like you can fall on teachers to kind of guide you, or you don't really have to worry about budget or time constraints as much because the schedule is sort of built out for you. Um, and that's where I think having the practical non-academic experience comes in, because then that's going to really throw you into this is how it really works in real life without having the backup or having, the not having to worry about funds or time, because those two are actually they can make or break a production, I feel like.
Yes, thank you. And we can transition into the next question. But this one is about, gaining a lot of practical experience. Basically, how would you recommend finding these projects and getting involved with them? Since you mentioned, you know, getting your start in finding individual projects, I guess they want to know, how would you find them? Where would you go to?
Mm. So the two that I worked on during COVID, I found, I think, on a Facebook group. It was a like Bay Area film, television kind of um, crewing group where people were sort of just dropping like, "Hey, I'm working on a short film. I need to fill this so and so crew roles. If anyone's interested or has experience, DM." I found a couple that I was looking specifically for producer producer roles because that is what I studied for, and I wanted to be able to apply those skills and also see am I able to even take what I learned and apply it to an actual production. So Facebook groups apparently are very good, but this is also during COVID, so I don't know if that really applies now. But it's worth looking into, I feel like, especially if you just want a less structured, more casual sort of experience, because that also is very different than having a very structured productions. But there's also websites that I know are specifically for crewing, like I think it's Mandy. That's the one that I was looking into when I was in London, and I do believe they still also provide roles in the United States. So there's a ton of websites where you look for crews. I would say it's also just like keeping in touch with anyone in the industry. They might have side projects that they're working on that are eventually going to need a producer or a scriptwriter or, first AD, first AC, any sort of role. It's hard to tell, but opportunities I feel like just kind of appear when they're ready to appear, and being open to any sort of opportunities is good. And I wish I had taken a lot more of like I had looked into more technical opportunities. For example, I looked into those producing roles with the two shorts that I worked on, but at the same time I found out that I actually really liked being first AC when I was when I was working on the web series pilot. It was really I liked doing focus pulling, so I also kept an eye out for like is anyone looking for a focus puller, because I wanted to get more experience with that. Um, funny enough, I also like clapping, playing with the clapper board. So I know that's probably like not the most important crew role to be hiring for, but I was also looking to see if anyone just wanted to find someone to do the cloud report, and I would just do that. Any sort of position I think that you particularly enjoy. It doesn't have to be the role that you're looking to get into, but any practical sort of whatever role you enjoy doing, getting more experience with that is good because that way you have sort of a lot of opportunities to a lot of roles that you can apply for, a lot of opportunities that aren't closed off to you. You have a wider berth to look at. So yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. And also, I want to plug Asians Animation has the 4P production program that they
Mm.
do, and also the immersive labs that you can create shorts and you can create projects with them, and that can help you get experience to put on your resume. So, just a little hint there, a plug for AA. We have another question. Do you have any tips for people with large time gaps and experiences trying to promote themselves?
Not quite sure, only because I've never had that like a significant time gap between jobs. I'm always the kind of person like I need to have something going on. But I think if you're still in that time gap period, finding something on the side to work on, even if it's like a project for yourself, like I'm self-studying to do this and learn this skill, whatever you can do to add more skills to add something to your skill set while you're in the process of looking for jobs is going to be helpful because then I don't know if they actually ask you what you were doing during this time gap, if they even point it out. But if they do, it's a good look to be able to say, oh, I've been working on these skills, I've been developing this and that, I've taken these classes so I can learn more about this aspect because it also shows that you're passionate about what you want to do. And that also speaks a lot of volumes, especially when you're talking to the hiring manager.
Also, in my experience, I have time gaps in my resume. Nobody really asks me about
Oh,
like,
good.
oh yeah, where were you between this time and because that can
That'd be
be
kind of
like an
weird.
interrogation. Yeah, I'll be like flag. But yeah, I don't think yeah, completely agree. Like you shouldn't worry about time gaps in your resume
Yeah.
for that. I wanted to ask, you
Mhm.
know, what are the elements that you might think might help someone take a chance on an unconventional applicant?
Mm, I feel like it's a lot about how you reframe your past experiences into a production lens. How well do you word it on your resume, or how well do you talk about it in the interview process? And being able to be proud of what all the other experience, the non-conventional experiences you have, being able to convey how proud you are of these skills that you've learned is going to be really important. And embracing being different, showing enthusiasm and passion for learning and being curious about other things as opposed to like just being so focused on I really love script writing, this is all I'm going to do. If you show that you're also open to learning about other aspects of production, I think that's also very much appreciated. And showing that you're just well rounded and being able to adapt to anything. You know, sometimes you have to wear different hats in production. Like, for example, I'm a production coordinator right now, but there was a while when we didn't have a production assistant on the team. So I had to wear that hat and do production assistant roles. But now that we do have a production assistant, like if he has ever if he has ever has any questions about what he has to do or tasks that are given to him, because I've been in his shoes before, I can sort of guide him and be a mentor and show him the ropes and let him sort of develop the skills with my guidance. Or I guess moving upwards, there was a time when my producer was on maternity leave and there were responsibilities that are more producer specific that I had the honor and opportunity to take on. And from there, I sort of learned, okay, this is what a producer does. This is the kind of responsibilities that they have to take care of as far as overseeing a whole production. So once she was back, she could take back those responsibilities, but at the same time, I understood what she was doing and how it impacted the production. And as well as, if she ever has to go off for vacation or be out of office, I can easily step back into that role and be like, hey, don't worry, I can take care of this because I've already learned how to do it. So, yeah, being able to adapt and just kind of apply any non-conventional skills that you have to further develop ones that are going to be used more frequently in production would be really great. And showing curiosity for other areas of production. A lot of times, I think when you're first starting off, you're going to be very hesitant to ask questions. But if you show that you're interested in different areas, I think you'll find that most people are very willing to talk about what they do. So when I first joined, I reached out to someone in localization because I just transitioned out of working with the localization team at Netflix. And I was like, hey, how does localization work at Disney? What are your processes? And I can sort of understand, because I had the knowledge of how it works at Netflix, I can understand what they're talking about. And then that later on helps inform me, okay, this is what the process is like for localization. How is that going to impact my production, and what do I need to look out for? So it all connects in a way, surprisingly.
That's true. Yeah, because I know a lot of people, I've gotten from my interviewers, they're like, oh, I know you don't have a animation background, but it's very interesting that you started in this background and ended up here. And they always ask about the journey.
Yeah.
So it's great to know, what sets you apart, what elements they look for. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the same for me. I had zero experience in animation. I'm pretty sure the job description for my current role asks for at least like 1 to 3 years, which I think is pretty generous. I know sometimes they ask for like 4 to 5, but
Right.
because I had no animation experience, I had to really rely on my MA, the indie shorts, but also just relay that I have a passion for animation. Like I grew up watching anime, Japanese anime, and I never really had an opportunity to look into how does the production aspect of it work besides watching behind the scenes documentaries, and showing that I was interested in animation was, I think, enough to make up for not having practical experience in it, because I wanted to have practical experience and I had the passion for learning about it. And that passion is shown through finding experiences outside of animation, working on indie short, finding skills that would apply in animation and further developing those. You don't necessarily need to meet the number of years requirement in the industry, as long as you can show that you really are interested in it and are willing to learn about learn about the process of animation and gain the skills necessary to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear because, I know a lot of roles are like, you must have worked on this show before to
Yeah.
apply, and that has discouraged me before, not gonna lie.
Oh.
But yeah, but thank you so much for like saying how, there is hope, in applying for roles that, like they say, like, oh, you have to have this experience in order to
Mhm.
potentially get the job or an interview. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
of
we
course.
are 4 minutes. We have 4 minutes left to our time. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
this panel event. I would love to thank Asians in Animation for hosting this career summit. Thank you, Rachel Leung, for speaking on this topic today. And thank you to all the audience members that joined today. You got some very useful information out of this panel. So I hope you all took notes. And if you did it and you're just chilling throughout the event, that's totally fine. Just trying to, embrace the information, soak it in. This panel is being recorded, so you can come and watch it back later on.
Thank you so much. And thank you, AA, for inviting me to talk. This is actually my first time speaking so in depth about my journey, and it's almost like a nice journey down memory lane for me to just walk through it all. But I really hope that you guys were able to find something useful, and good luck on your journeys. I'm sure you guys are going to make it there, I believe.
Yes, we manifest for all of
Yeah.
us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.